Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you were there? Or struggled to find the right word during a conversation, only to have it pop into your head hours later? If this sounds familiar, trust me, you're not alone. Many of us start noticing these little memory lapses as we get older, and while some of it is just part of aging, what if I told you that certain foods could be speeding up the decline of your brain health? I remember sitting across from my neighbor Margaret one afternoon. She's sharp as a tack, always reading books or doing crossword puzzles, but she confessed something that surprised me. You know, she said, I used to eat a lot of processed snacks, chips, cookies, all that stuff. Then I started noticing my focus slipping. My doctor suggested cutting back on those foods, and honestly, it made a world of difference. Her story stuck with me because it's proof that small changes can have a big impact, and science backs her up. Studies show that what we eat directly affects our brain health. For example, research from the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease highlights how diets high in sugar and unhealthy fats can increase inflammation in the brain, which may lead to cognitive decline over time. On the flip side, eating nutrient-dense foods like leafy greens, berries, and fatty fish has been linked to better memory and sharper thinking. But here's the catch. Many of us are unknowingly consuming foods that sabotage our brains every single day. That's why today we're going to talk about 6 foods that could be harming your brain health, and what you can do instead. Trust me, you'll want to stick around until the end, because the last food on this list might shock you. And who knows? By making a few simple swaps, you could protect your mind for years to come. Before we dive in, though, I need to make one thing crystal clear. This video is for informational purposes only. It's based on publicly available research, but everyone's body is different. Always check with your doctor or a qualified healthcare provider before making any major changes to your diet or lifestyle. Science is constantly evolving, so what works for one person might not work for another. With that said, let's get started. The first food you'll want to watch out for is sugar. Specifically, added sugars found in things like soda, candy, and baked goods. Now, I'm not saying you can never enjoy a slice of cake again, but here's the deal. Excessive sugar intake has been linked to a higher risk of dementia and other forms of cognitive decline. A study published in Diabetologia found that people with consistently high blood sugar levels had a greater chance of developing Alzheimer's disease, even if they didn't have diabetes. Why does this happen? Well, when you consume too much sugar, it can cause insulin resistance in the brain. Insulin helps regulate glucose, which is the brain's primary source of energy. When the brain becomes resistant to insulin, it struggles to function properly, leading to memory problems and slower thinking. I'll admit, I used to love grabbing a sugary coffee drink in the morning. It felt like such a treat. But after learning more about how sugar impacts the brain, I switched to black coffee or tea with a splash of almond milk. The best part? I noticed a difference within weeks. My energy levels stayed steady throughout the day, and I didn't feel that dreaded mid-afternoon crash anymore. If you're someone who enjoys sweet treats, don't worry. There are healthier alternatives. Try swapping refined sugar for natural sweeteners like honey or maple syrup in moderation. Or reach for fruit instead. Berries, for example, are packed with antioxidants that actually support brain health. One study from Annals of Neurology showed that women who ate more blueberries and strawberries had slower rates of cognitive decline compared to those who ate less. Now let's move on to the second food that could be harming your brain, trans fats. You've probably heard of these before. They're the artificial fats found in fried foods, margarine, and some packaged snacks. While they've been banned in many countries, they're still lurking in certain products. Especially in the US, trans fats are particularly dangerous because they increase inflammation and damage blood vessels, including those in the brain. A landmark study from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that people who consumed higher amounts of trans fats had an increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. The researchers believe this is because trans fats interfere with the production of omega-3 fatty acids, which are essential for maintaining healthy brain cells. Here's where it gets personal. I once met a man named Bill who worked long hours at a desk job. He relied heavily on fast food and microwave meals to get through his busy days. Over time, he noticed his memory wasn't as sharp as it used to be. His doctor encouraged him to cut out processed foods and focus on whole, nutrient-rich options. Within months, Bill reported feeling more alert and focused. He even joked, "I think my brain finally woke up." If you're ready to ditch trans fats, start by reading labels carefully. Look for phrases like partially hydrogenated oils, which indicate the presence of trans fats. Instead, opt for healthier fats like avocados, nuts, seeds, and olive oil. These not only nourish your brain, but also keep your heart healthy too. At this point, you might be wondering, okay, so I should avoid sugar and trans fats, but what about everything else? Great question. Let's keep going, because understanding how specific foods affect your brain will empower you to make smarter choices. Next, we'll explore how alcohol and ultra-processed meats fit into the picture, and why moderation is key. Stay with me, because the solutions are simpler than you might think. Now that we've covered sugar and trans fats, let's talk about another big player when it comes to brain health: alcohol. I know this might hit a nerve for some of you, especially if you enjoy a glass of wine with dinner or a cold beer on the weekends. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with enjoying alcohol in moderation. In fact, some studies suggest that small amounts of red wine may even have protective effects due to its antioxidant content. But here's the catch: excessive drinking can wreak havoc on your brain over time. Research from the Lancet Public Health Journal shows that heavy alcohol consumption is linked to an increased risk of dementia, particularly in older adults. Alcohol is a neurotoxin, meaning it damages brain cells directly. Over time, this damage can lead to memory loss, poor decision-making, and even structural changes in the brain. One study found that people who drank more than 14 units of alcohol per week, the equivalent of about 6 pints of beer or 7 glasses of wine, had smaller brain volumes compared to those who drank less. I remember talking to my Uncle Jim about this topic. He was always the life of the party, cracking jokes and telling stories late into the night, often with a drink in hand. But as he got older, he noticed his sharp wit wasn't so sharp anymore. Simple tasks like balancing his checkbook became harder, and he'd forget details from conversations. His doctor suggested cutting back on alcohol, and while it wasn't easy at first, Jim told me, "It's like a fog lifted. My mind feels clearer than it has in years." If you're someone who enjoys alcohol, don't panic. This isn't about giving up everything you love. Instead, focus on moderation. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, recommends no more than 1 drink per day for women and 2 drinks per day for men, assuming you're in good health. If you're unsure whether your current habits are affecting your brain, try tracking how much you consume for a week. Sometimes just being aware of the amount can inspire healthier choices. Now let's shift gears slightly and talk about ultra-processed meats, things like bacon, sausages, hot dogs, and deli meats. These foods are staples in many households because they're convenient, flavorful, and satisfying. But here's the problem: they're loaded with sodium, preservatives, and unhealthy fats, all of which can harm your brain. A study published in Clinical Nutrition found that high intake of processed meats was associated with a greater risk of cognitive decline. Why? Well, these foods promote inflammation throughout the body, including the brain. Chronic inflammation is like a slow-burning fire. It damages tissues over time and makes it harder for your brain to function optimally. Plus, many processed meats contain nitrates, which are chemicals used to preserve color and extend shelf life. While they keep food looking fresh, nitrates can form compounds in the body that are toxic to brain cells. This hits close to home for me because growing up, my family loved Sunday breakfasts featuring stacks of pancakes, eggs, and crispy bacon. It wasn't until I learned about the potential risks of processed meats that I started looking for alternatives. Now, instead of bacon, I'll use turkey sausage or smoked salmon. They still add plenty of flavor without the harmful additives. Even something as simple as swapping out deli ham for sliced roasted chicken can make a difference. You might be thinking, but what about occasional indulgences? Does every slice of bacon count? The truth is, consistency matters more than perfection. If you're eating processed meats daily, consider scaling back to once or twice a week. Pair them with nutrient-dense sides like vegetables or whole grains to balance the meal. Every little change adds up, and your brain will thank you for it. Let's pause here for a moment and reflect on what we've covered so far. We've talked about sugar, trans fats, alcohol, and processed meats, 4 foods that can take a toll on your brain health. But don't feel overwhelmed. You don't have to overhaul your entire diet overnight. Start by identifying one area where you can make a small improvement. Maybe it's swapping sugary snacks for fruit, choosing olive oil over margarine, or cutting back on cocktails during the week. Small steps lead to lasting results. Now let's move on to 2 more foods that could be silently sabotaging your brain: refined carbohydrates and artificial sweeteners. These culprits often fly under the radar because they seem harmless or even healthy, But trust me, their impact on your brain is worth paying attention to. Ready to dive deeper? Let's keep going, because understanding these connections will help you make smarter choices moving forward. Let's pick up where we left off and talk about refined carbohydrates, those sneaky foods that can sabotage your brain health without you even realizing it. Think white bread, pastries, pasta, and anything made with refined flour. At first glance, they might seem harmless enough, especially if you've been eating them your whole life. But here's the truth. Refined carbs are essentially sugar in disguise. They're quickly broken down into glucose, causing spikes in your blood sugar levels, which can wreak havoc on your brain over time. A study from Diabetes Care found a strong link between diets high in refined carbs and an increased risk of cognitive decline. Why? When your blood sugar is constantly spiking and crashing, it creates inflammation and oxidative stress in the brain. This can damage neurons and impair communication between brain cells, making it harder to think clearly or remember things. It's like running a car engine on low-quality fuel. It might work for a while, but eventually the wear and tear catches up. I'll never forget a conversation I had with my friend Susan, who loves baking. She used to make cookies, cakes, and muffins almost every week, not just for herself but for her grandkids too. But as she got older, she noticed her energy levels were all over the place. One day she'd feel fine, and the next, she'd be exhausted and foggy-headed. Her doctor suggested cutting back on refined carbs, so she started experimenting with healthier alternatives. Instead of white flour, she began using almond flour or oat flour. Instead of sugar, she tried mashed bananas or unsweetened applesauce. The result? Not only did her energy stabilize, but she also said her mind felt sharper than it had in years. If you're someone who enjoys carb-heavy meals, don't worry. You don't have to give them up entirely. The key is to choose whole grains instead of refined ones. Swap white rice for brown rice, regular pasta for whole wheat or chickpea pasta, and white bread for sprouted grain bread. These options contain more fiber, which slows the release of glucose into your bloodstream and keeps your brain fueled steadily throughout the day. Even small swaps can make a big difference. Now let's talk about the sixth and final food on our list, artificial sweeteners. These days they're everywhere: diet sodas, sugar-free gum, low-calorie snacks, and even some healthy protein powders. On the surface, they seem like a smart choice because they don't raise your blood sugar the way regular sugar does. But here's the problem. Artificial sweeteners may not be as innocent as they appear. Research published in Stroke, a journal by the American Heart Association, suggests that consuming artificially sweetened beverages is associated with a higher risk of stroke and dementia. While the exact mechanism isn't fully understood, scientists believe these sweeteners disrupt gut bacteria, which play a crucial role in regulating brain function. Additionally, studies show that artificial sweeteners can trick your brain into craving more sweets, leading to overeating and poor dietary choices overall. This one hits particularly close to home for me, because I used to drink diet soda every single day. I thought I was doing something good by avoiding sugar, but when I learned about the potential risks, I decided to cut back. At first, I missed the fizzy sweetness, so I switched to sparkling water with a splash of lemon or lime. Over time, my cravings for sugary drinks disappeared, and I felt better overall. My energy was steadier, and I didn't have those mid-afternoon slumps anymore. If you're hooked on artificial sweeteners, start by reducing your intake gradually. For example, if you typically add 2 packets of sweetener to your coffee, try cutting it down to 1. Or if you love diet soda, alternate it with plain sparkling water. Every little step counts, and your brain will thank you for it. At this point, you might be wondering how to put all of this into practice. After all, it's one thing to know what to avoid, but it's another to actually make changes in your daily life. Let's talk about overcoming common challenges, because I know firsthand that change isn't always easy. One of the biggest hurdles people face is convenience. Processed foods, sugary snacks, and fast meals are designed to save time, and when you're busy or tired, it's tempting to reach for what's easiest. I once met a woman named Carol who worked long hours and relied heavily on frozen dinners and takeout. When her doctor warned her about the impact of her diet on her brain health, she felt overwhelmed. Where would she find the time to cook healthy meals? Here's what helped her: meal prepping. On Sundays, she'd spend an hour or 2 preparing simple, nutritious meals for the week ahead, things like grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, and quinoa salads. She stored everything in portion-sized containers, so all she had to do was grab and go. Within weeks, she noticed improvements, not just in her physical health, but in her mental clarity too. She told me, "It's amazing how much better I feel now that I'm feeding my body and my brain the right fuel." Another challenge is dealing with cravings. Whether it's a hankering for chips, cookies, or soda, cravings can derail even the best intentions. One strategy that works wonders is finding healthier alternatives that satisfy your taste buds without harming your brain. For example, if you crave something salty, try air-popped popcorn seasoned with nutritional yeast or sea salt. If you're in the mood for something sweet, reach for dark chocolate, 70% cocoa or higher, or a handful of fresh berries. Science backs this approach too. A study from Appetite found that replacing unhealthy snacks with nutrient-dense options can reduce cravings over time. Your brain starts associating healthier foods with pleasure, making it easier to stick to your goals. Finally, let's talk about mindset. Many people assume that aging means slowing down mentally, but research shows that staying socially engaged and intellectually stimulated can protect your brain as you grow older. Activities like reading, learning new skills, or even playing games like chess or Sudoku keep your mind sharp and agile. Combine these habits with a brain-healthy diet, and you're setting yourself up for success. As we wrap up this section, I want to leave you with a story that ties everything together. A few years ago, I met a man named George who was determined to turn his health around after being diagnosed with prediabetes. He knew he needed to make changes, but he didn't know where to start. Slowly, he began cutting out sugary drinks, swapping processed meats for lean proteins, and choosing whole grains over refined carbs. Within months, he noticed incredible improvements, not just physically but mentally too. He told me, "I feel like I got my life back. My memory is sharper, I have more energy, and I wake up excited for each new day." George's story reminds us that no matter where you are in life, it's never too late to take charge of your health. You don't have to overhaul everything at once. Start small, stay consistent, and focus on progress, not perfection. Now that we've covered all 6 foods that could harm your brain health, sugar, trans fats, alcohol, processed meats, refined carbs, and artificial sweeteners, let's bring it all together with some final thoughts and actionable steps you can take today. Because understanding what to avoid is just the beginning. The real magic happens when you start making smarter choices, one step at a time. Stay with me. We're almost there, and I promise the conclusion will leave you feeling inspired and empowered. As we wrap up this conversation, I want to take a moment to reflect on everything we've covered together. We talked about 6 foods that could be harming your brain health: sugar, trans fats, alcohol, processed meats, refined carbs, and artificial sweeteners, and why it's so important to pay attention to what you're putting on your plate. But more than that, we explored how small, consistent changes can protect your brain and improve your overall well-being. Let me remind you of something powerful. Your choices matter. Every bite you take is an opportunity to nourish your body and mind, or to hold yourself back. It's not about being perfect, it's about making progress. You don't have to give up all your favorite foods overnight, but by swapping out the harmful ones for healthier alternatives, you're taking control of your future. And trust me, your brain will thank you for it. Here's a quick recap of what we've learned. A sugar can wreak havoc on your brain by causing insulin resistance and inflammation. Opt for natural sweeteners like honey or fresh fruit instead. A trans fats, found in fried and processed foods, damage blood vessels and interfere with brain function. Choose healthy fats like avocados, nuts, and olive oil. Alcohol, when consumed excessively, harms brain cells and increases dementia risk. Stick to moderate drinking, or cut it out entirely if that works better for you. Processed meats are packed with sodium, preservatives, and unhealthy fats that fuel inflammation. Swap them for lean proteins like turkey, chicken, or plant-based options. A refined carbs spike your blood sugar and leave your brain running on empty. Go for whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, or oats to keep your energy steady. Artificial sweeteners may seem like a smart alternative, but they disrupt gut bacteria and trick your brain into craving more sweets. Try natural flavor enhancers like citrus or herbs instead. Now let's distill all of this into some actionable steps you can start implementing today. First, commit to one change, just one, that feels manageable for you. Maybe it's cutting back on sugary drinks or swapping white bread for whole grain. Once that becomes a habit, move on to the next thing. Remember, small steps add up over time, and consistency is far more important than perfection. Second, surround yourself with support. Whether it's friends, family, or online communities, having people who encourage and inspire you makes a world of difference. I once met a woman named Linda who joined a local cooking group focused on healthy eating. She told me, "It's easier to make changes when you're doing it with others. We share recipes, tips, and encouragement. It keeps me motivated." If you don't have access to a group like that, consider starting one yourself or joining virtual forums where you can connect with like-minded individuals. Third, focus on adding rather than subtracting. Instead of obsessing over what you're cutting out, think about all the delicious, nutrient-rich foods you can bring into your life. Load up on leafy greens, berries, fatty fish, nuts, and seeds, all of which have been shown to boost brain health. One study from neurology found that people who followed a Mediterranean-style diet rich in these foods had a 25% lower risk of cognitive decline compared to those who didn't. So fill your plate with color and variety, and watch how good you feel both mentally and physically. I also want to share a bold claim backed by science. Experts like Dr. Dale Bredesen, a pioneer in Alzheimer's research, suggest that lifestyle changes, including diet, can significantly reduce the risk of neurodegenerative diseases. In fact, his groundbreaking work highlights how addressing nutrition, exercise, sleep, and stress management can reverse early signs of cognitive decline in some cases. This isn't just about preventing problems, it's about optimizing your brain for peak performance at any age. Now, here's my challenge to you. Pick one food swap you'll try this week. Maybe it's trading soda for sparkling water, choosing salmon over bacon, or baking with almond flour instead of white flour. Whatever it is, commit to it and see how you feel. Then come back here and let me know in the comments. What did you choose and how did it go? Your story might inspire someone else to take the first step toward better brain health. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more tips on aging well and living vibrantly. Sharing this video with a friend or loved one could also make a huge difference in their life. Together, we can create a community rooted in compassion, curiosity, and a shared commitment to thriving at every stage of life. Finally, I want to leave you with this uplifting thought. Aging doesn't mean losing your edge. It means sharpening it in new ways. By feeding your brain the right fuel, staying active, and nurturing your emotional well-being, you're setting yourself up for a vibrant, fulfilling future. As Margaret, my neighbor, likes to say, the best years are still ahead. You just have to believe it and act like it. Here's to living your best life at any age. Thank you for spending this time with me. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of your brain, and never underestimate the power of small, meaningful changes. Because when it comes to your health, every choice counts. See you soon.